Hello everyone, No One of Consequence here with episode 7 of my high-level Dungeons & Dragons campaign playthrough. And here is a player character roster. There are 7 characters being run by 5 different players. And this is a roster of both human and animal NPCs associated with the party. Where we left off last time, the characters had returned to the spaceship's entrance area and began following a wide corridor leading north. They soon noticed on either side of them doors which required no key card to open. They were push-button operated. So the characters decided to see what was behind them. They first entered the room on the left. It turned out to be a video game arcade for the amusement of the ship's crew and passengers. And amazingly, the games were still functional. Of course, the characters didn't really know what to make of all the flashing lights, screen animations, and electronic noises. They messed around with the machines for a bit, but then decided to move on. The characters then entered the room on the opposite side of the hallway. It turned out to be a lounge with plenty of plush chairs and couches and coffee tables as well. Varys and Gorbadoc immediately started plotting over how they could get some of this furniture out of here and use it in their Yacht Rock Club. At any rate, after a quick search of the room, the characters moved on. The characters then continued north and came to a T intersection. Also, this section of the ship was illuminated, so the characters no longer needed to use their own light sources. Along the north wall was a push-button operated door, so the characters entered the room beyond. The place was empty, except for a couple of metal desks and chairs. Suddenly, a voice began speaking, seemingly from thin air, but it was actually through speakers built into the ceiling. It told the characters to please come back tomorrow, as no medical personnel were currently on duty. However, if this was an emergency, they could report to the Med 1 or Med 2 aid stations. Now, this is where I deviated from the module a bit. As written, the characters would not understand the voice without the use of magic or a language translator. However, I decided that once the police robots had processed and translated the characters' language, they would share that information with the ship's central computer. And thus, any future encounters with robots or other automated systems would be understood by the characters. I felt this was a logical change to the module and would make a more enjoyable experience for the players. At any rate, the characters ignored the automated voice, asking them to leave, and instead they continued to explore the area. They found an examination room and a waiting area. However, except for the metal furniture, the place was empty of anything interesting. There were a couple of key card doors here as well, but of course the characters could not operate them. The characters then exited through a door at the opposite end of the medical center and back out into the hallway. The characters now turned a corner in the hallway just outside the medical center and began heading north again. They soon came to another push-button doorway, only this one had a flashing blue and red light mounted on the wall next to it. It was decided that only Obrak, Varys, and Gorbadoc would investigate this room while the rest of the party stood back. Inside the room were 2 police robots manning a desk. There were also 2 keycard doors, one each on both the north and south walls. And here is the illustration that accompanies this encounter. Now, as per the module text, these police robots will automatically apprehend anyone who cannot immediately present a high-level key card. However, I decided to modify the encounter somewhat. The robots first asked the characters what was the nature of their visit and did they have a crime to report. When the characters said they did not, the robots replied that this was a restricted area, and since they had no business here, they must leave immediately. The characters complied, so the police robots did not take any further actions. And if you're enjoying the story so far, please remember to hit the like button. The characters continued north along the hallway and came to a corner turning east. Up ahead, they could see open doorways as well as movement within them. Suddenly, a series of shrieks and cries came from the open doors, and a horde of short, plant-looking humanoid creatures armed with crude weapons came pouring out into the hallway. These creatures are called Vegapygmies. They appeared for the first time in this adventure module and were later codified in the Monster Manual 2. As the Vegapygmies closed with the characters, the warrior types formed a line at the corner while the others fell back. Also, Varus cast a mirror image spell on himself. The characters quickly learn that these creatures are not particularly tough on the individual level. The problem is that there are so many of them. The Vegapygmies soon began flanking around the characters' front line, and even Niobe and Garrett were forced to engage with them. Eventually, enough of the creatures were defeated that the rest fled deeper into the ship and disappeared. Gorbadoc and Garrett investigated the rooms they were lairing in, but found only useless trash. Next, the characters gathered together so that Niobe could cast a bless spell on the party. When the Vegapygmies attacked, they realized too late that they had not yet done that, and the spell cannot be cast once combat has begun. Next, the characters decided to check out this push-button operated door located directly across from the Vegapygmy lairs. This room turned out to be the ship's library, although instead of books, the room held several microfiche viewers. Now, I'm sure Gygax selected that particular piece of technology when he wrote this adventure because that's what libraries had back in those days. However, I decided to make the machines actual computers. But first, Garrett went to inspect a skeleton wearing the tattered remains of a uniform and lying in the far corner of the room. However, the only thing of interest he found was a small, rectangle-shaped piece of gray plastic. The characters did not yet realize it, but this was a lucky find, especially so early in the adventure. Because this is a gray key card, which was carried only by the most senior officers. As the characters would eventually come to realize, this card would allow them to open any door on the ship. There was also a metal cabinet next to the skeleton. However, there's no obvious way to open it, and the metal did not even dent when struck. The characters eventually gave up on trying to get it open, at least for now. Next, Thor began experimenting with trying to operate one of the computers. The module provides details on how the characters can do this and what they can learn. But the most important thing Thor learned was that there is a total of 6 levels on this ship, and that they were currently on level 1. In order to reach the lower levels, the characters would have to descend through one of 4 access chutes, like the one they found near the ship's entrance. The characters now left the library and began following the wide corridor north. They soon came to a 4-way intersection. However, the hallway leading west was dark, and there were even mushrooms growing out of it and spilling into the main corridor. So the characters decided to go east. Alright, well that's all for now. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. If you can, leave a comment and let me know what you think. Please consider subscribing, and anything you do to help support the channel, I appreciate it. Thanks again. Bye for now.